it just seems odd at best to me. We are now getting a list. Let's put our words here. If you want to protect your family, you get to be on a list. And if in fact the government deems that you are not capable of handling that protection, somehow they have a right to kick down your door and remove it from you. The aggressiveness against our Constitution, they're not even hiding it anymore. With each step, with each executive order, our rights are being taken from us, one step at a time, beyond the silence that we were put through for the last few years, into a world of, you will do what I say and you will be happy. And I don't know anybody, part of humanity, that finds happiness through that path. So I have up on the screen a story that I'm going to round this out on. But it's very interesting how the defund police movement has now shifted to a whoops, we got to put money back into that because we're losing our citizens, we're losing our businesses, we're losing our tax base. It really has nothing to do with a care for you or a care for your business, but rather, wait a minute, if you're not here paying taxes, I won't have a job. And thus, let's rearm those just to satisfy slightly. But don't worry, in the background, we'll have plenty of policies to restrict it. It's all gotten out of control. And this is my presentation for MayDay. May 1st. A day of asking for help, wave the white flag. But there's nobody coming. There's nobody coming to rescue us. Nobody's coming in our home to help us. Nobody's coming into, you're not going to see troopers jump out of helicopters over the United States to rescue the US citizens. No, it's us. It's up to us to have a voice, to speak out. And no matter what policies are in place, recall that they're in policies. Keep stepping forward. Stand up for yourself. Stand up for your family. This is the only way to go. So I'm going to step back here a moment and get this MayDay kicked off. So I thought it was really interesting. Doesn't that color scheme remind you of other propaganda? Why, out of the strength of a union, out of hard workers, blue-collar workers, are you going to see this color scheme? But it sure goes along with the propaganda, doesn't it? So here we have MayDay, the world's workers rally. France sees pension anger. Sure they do. We would see it here too if the Americans realize that you don't have a pension, it's one big pyramid scheme. But that day will come, unfortunately, sooner rather than later. MayDay demonstrators clash with police in France as workers protest their president. A MayDay march drew hundreds of Milwaukee. If we can scroll this down a little bit. Clashes erupt in France. MayDay protest erupts in Paris. This is what we're getting here. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into the next one. Now, this is what I recall MayDay is. Official use of MayDay call to mean distress, signifies danger and call for help. It was adopted in 1927, almost 100 years ago. Its official use resulted from the International Radio Telegraph Convention when it was seen fit that MayDay should replace the previously used SOS. Did you know that? The convention sought to have an easier way to ask for help than the then widely used SOS. Okay, why is that easier? I don't know. But if we go back to this other article over here on the right-hand side, it also states that in Ireland, people used to put flowers on the doorstep of windowsills of their houses on May morning to bring good luck and protection against fairies. So for the United States, MayDay is a call for help. In Ireland, it was a blessing or a protection, right? I think that's kind of quirky. But really, it must have been beautiful to see the flowers out on all the stoops. And then they're relating to what's going on in France right now, which has been going on for months, as they woke up to the fact that all they've worked for isn't really there. It's not funded, even though it was their funds that they earned. So if we come back to the United States, which, you know, around the world, the United States is really, even though we have our challenges here, when California falls, so will go the rest of the states. When the US falls, so will go the rest of the countries. And I think the US has fallen. I've always said when this day comes, I would just go live in another country. I'm mobile, pack up and go. But honestly, where would we go? The United States right now is so corrupt and its fingers seem to be around the planet. I don't know where a safe place to hide would be. Thus, using my voice anyways. So what do we have here? I saw on the news here, it says U.S. must raise the debt limit by as early as June 1st to avoid default. This was 1 hour ago. It's actually maybe an hour and a half from when I pulled it, and it rested here. But this is Yellen again, just crying wolf that this debt ceiling has to be raised. Well, who spent all the money? Now, I don't know about you and your household, but typically you take how much money's coming in, and then from that you create your lifestyle, right? What kind of home are you going to have? What kind of car are you going to drive? Do you get vacation? For many, do you have food on the table? It's really driven by the income. Now, events shift in life, and at some point we don't have the same income level that we had previously, and we've got to downgrade, we've got to shift. And in many worlds, I've had to say, wait a minute, what do you shift when there's nothing left to downgrade? There's nothing left. And yet, this administration has continued to print money and spend and spend and spend. And now they're trying to take the people on the other side of the aisle and twist their arm and say, look, if you don't do this, we're going to default. And if the US defaults, it's major. It'll rock the planet. And so they've lied, they've cheated, they've stolen, and they've done it across the aisle, back and forth. But here we are, a cry for help. You've got to pass it. And look at this. On the other side of the aisle, we have the House voted 4 days ago to pass the debt ceiling bill, which was a huge win for McCarthy. So they put together a package. They increased it by, I believe it was a little under $2 trillion increase, which I'm opposed to altogether. The spending needs to stop. If you don't have the money, you don't spend the money. And as a government, you don't increase that every single year, year over year. I learned as a federal employee that you're not worth anything unless you have people reporting to you. And every year you need to increase that pyramid that you're building to make yourself more powerful. That's not a way to run a budget. That's a way to run a country into the ground as we are today. So what do we have here? We have the House that, even though they didn't want to increase the budget, they don't want to bow down to the overspending that's occurred. They realized that the United States cannot default on its debt. So it increased it, but there were some caveats. The caveats are, wait a minute, you can't increase this debt ceiling or the debt more than 2% annually going forward. That's it, period. There is a cap on the spending. Well, didn't quite like that. There's some other caveats in there as well on what's getting plucked and removed. And unfortunately, just like any other political ploy, what do you go after? When you want to squeeze a budget and get more money, you don't go after, well, the executive's only making $2 million a year. You say, well, what about those teachers and police and firefighters? And now, since police are persona non gratis, you really go after, oh, those hardworking teachers, they're going to need a raise. And those firefighters that really stand up for you, and then they don't get the raise, but that's the conversation that comes up around why you need to increase the debt ceiling. Well, the House went ahead and put together a package, voted and passed it. And yet here, 4 days later, mainstream media and the other side of the aisle and all its puppets are yelling and screaming and waving their Mayday flag that this has to pass by June 1st. Well, then buckle up and get your job done. At some point, we the people are no longer concerned with the games. We want this rail run back in and move forward correctly. So the next thing on MayDay, when I saw this last week, I was just really shocked. Fox News was announcing that we, the United States, funded research to create mutant viruses at Wuhan lab. Now, if you're here listening to this, you already know that. You already know the massive amount of funding that came from taxpayers, fed through the various universities in the United States, went to universities around the world, and then went into these labs that do gain of function. And the number is in dispute on how many there are in Ukraine, but there's a couple dozen in Ukraine, if not significantly more than that. I've heard quite a high number. And the US has funded these, and they're protecting them. But this is a Mayday, because seriously, when the news has been lying about it and been covering it up, and now finally comes out and said, by the way, the United States is now a target. It's really scary. That means that we, the United States, which unfortunately is what I've been saying for 3 years, we, the United States, created this. We are responsible for the global shutdown. Again, we wave the white flag for help. We're going to need it. Now, as we move on, here's another great topic. This was back in July of 22, so we're approaching a year from this. As of today, more than 8,000 international officers have trained at the base in Arkansas, including some of these top generals. So we had generals training here almost a year ago, according to news reports. But if we kind of look down this, there's quite a bit of information here. In December, they considered dramatically expanding the training. And here we have last week, US to begin training these forces on tanks. We know this is a proxy war. We know that this is our war. We are vested in the country. We know that it is incredibly corrupt what is happening there. And we know that our occupant in the White House and his family and many, many others that kind of slide under the radar as their sons are also right there along the one being investigated. This is the US over there. We're the one that started it. We're the one that would not allow peace agreements. And we're the ones that are taunting, fueling, and training. God help America. Some of the articles that come up here. Now, we've known that this is going to happen. We know that this is the next step. It has to be. You know, we've looked at Hong Kong. We've looked at other movements. And so on April 15th, China's top diplomat made a statement. They hope and believe that Germany will support the peaceful reunification of Taiwan. They're announcing it's happening. They're just hoping that they get the support. It's happening. The US cannot battle wars on multiple fronts. In fact, we're barely battling this war. We've given away, abandoned much of our weapons and technology, abandoned the core military. Those who refuse to inject the substance into their arm were passed along. So who's left? Who's making these decisions? And if they're making decisions in alignment with their values, are they your values? But as we look at the world, there's plenty of reasons why the United States needs to start waving the white flag and seriously saying, Mayday, Mayday. Now, we heard from Ronald Reagan, one of his fabulous speeches that we just don't hear replayed often enough. And of course, you can Google or YouTube it and identify it. But he said the one way to stop war is essentially to stop being in the war. Stop. Step back and go home. There's no shame in that. At some point in our personal lives, we need to realize that maybe we're fighting something that is not worth. Maybe in 5 years, it wouldn't matter. But in this case, we're on a path where in 5 years, we won't be here if they continue on this path. This needs to stop. The military-industrial complex is driving a game and moving chess pieces that we can't afford to lose. We need to stop, allow a peace treaty, and to come home. And now for the final of MayDay here. This is really out of what we might see in something like Minority Report. Now, the idea is if you watch Dukes of Hazzard or maybe Chips, placing an age there, then you always saw a police officers chasing down a car. Well, at some point when public areas became more crowded, more pedestrians, a lot of cities pulled back and said you could not do high-speed chases at all around people. Well, who does that help? That person who committed the crime would know the rules and would know that as long as they go a little faster, they're out of there. They're fine. It's free and clear. In most cases, they switch the license plates or it's not their vehicle, it's stolen. So they're gone, out. Well, in this case, Newark Police Department has come up with the solution. See if this will rotate down a little bit. So this says that the New York Police Department debuted its latest set of high-tech policing equipment. Now remember, I've shown you before the robot dogs that they've deployed and recalled back, and we know that they acquired them, so they're somewhere. But here it says, New York denizens will soon come face to face with robot dogs, mentioned here, Daleks, and something new, a pneumatic gun that can fire a sticky GPS tracker at a moving vehicle. I don't know about you. On one side that says, okay, they don't have to do a high-speed chase. They can just catch the guy later or the person later. Maybe, maybe not. But I do have a question over that regards our Constitution. Do we have any rights without a warrant? Do they have a right to do that? I don't know. I'm sure that this will be challenged in court. There will be a lawsuit of somebody who has robbed a bank, high-speed chase, police decide to pull back and insert a sticky on the car, high-speed sticky, right? And then the criminal decides to sue because their rights were violated. Well, we'll see how this one plays out. All right. Well, I do hope you had a fabulous MayDay, and I'm really, really looking forward to moving through to the summer issues. Have a great afternoon.